10 rookie mistakes I made while paddleboarding and how you can avoid them. But by mistakes, I don't necessarily mean mistakes, just the ways I figured out my own personal preferences. Some of these things are not necessarily bad, just I wish I had done them differently. The first mistake I want to tell you about is one I make all the time. This pin either opens or closes the valve, and a lot of times I'll pump it up, but the valve will be open, so as soon as I take that hose off, a bunch of air rushes out, you lose PSI, and just everyone in the parking lot turns and looks at you because there's a big loud noise, and it's scary. Thank you to someone on TikTok that told me the little way to remember: up to sup, down and out, meaning if the valve is up, or the pin I should say is up, you are ready to stand up paddleboard. If it's down and out, that means the air is coming out. The problem I have run into sometimes is I'll remember, okay, we want to close this valve so that the air doesn't come out. This is so, precarious. It sometimes wants to open up on its own. If I even just like that made it pop up, I have to work on getting the hose on so exactly it doesn't touch it, and hopefully I don't have a bunch of air rushing out as soon as I take off that hose. But electric pumps also have some benefits. Today I want to tell you about one in particular. This is the Shark 3 from Outdoor Master. It's definitely a very serious pump. It's about $170 right now. First, it can really save time. How much time do you spend pumping up? This gets you on the water faster. It can blow up a paddleboard in about 4 minutes. It also saves your arms a little bit. You're not as tired by the time you get on the water. Let's say you forget to charge it though. This model can plug into your car and you can use the electricity directly from that. And if you did remember to charge it and you realize it has more power than you need, for example, let's say you already inflated your paddleboard, but then you remember your phone's dead, you can actually use this as a power bank. It has enough energy to pump up 6 paddleboards in a row, and it can also be used for 35 minutes without overheating. On this end, there are tons and tons of nozzles. This one is what fits my paddleboard, but there's 8 of these. So whatever thing you want to blow up, you probably have something that will fit it. And by the kinds of things you can blow up, I mean not just paddleboards, but it can also inflate kites, it can inflate air mattresses, inflatable tents, tons of stuff. When you turn it on, you can see at the top there are 3 modes: SUP, kite, and mat. I'm using SUP today, obviously. It does get a little loud, but it is quieter than other models at 80 decibels. Just so you know, I'm going up to inflate. Okay, up to inflate. Trying to put it on without bonking the thing in the middle. I think that was good. I'm doing this in an as shaded area as possible, but it is a bit of a sunny day. And here it goes, up to 11 PSI, it says. I'm actually going to lower that just because I'm nervous. Go. Oh, so exciting. You can see it already start inflating. See how it shut off on its own? Because I set the PSI. Now is the moment of truth. Did I do this right? I don't know. This is hissing, so that makes me nervous. I did it right for once! So thank you to Outdoor Master for letting me use the Shark. If you all are interested, I do have a discount code. All that stuff's gonna be in the description. If you are going to use a manual pump, the first time I used mine, I thought this gauge was broken. You have to have it to a pretty significant PSI before it starts to show up. Hi, butterfly. If you're using this particular kind, that is. If you don't inflate it to the recommended amount for your board, then it's gonna be kind of floppy. It's not gonna go as good as it should, for lack of a better word. Basically, if it doesn't feel solid, it's not inflated enough. Definitely use the recommended PSI. Now, once you inflate it, you want to flip it over and put the fins on. The first time I took it out, I put all 4 of them. Not all 4 of them. I put all 3 of them on, and it was so hard to turn at all. So what I've started doing is most of the time I just have these two here. I think if you wanted to be able to turn a whole lot, like if you were going on something like a narrower creek or something, maybe one fin would be good. There's also the possibility to not put any fins in. If you're going somewhere where you think you're going to drag the bottom, you can do that, but it leads to situations like this. Honestly, I haven't found a whole bunch of difference between setting the two up or just having the one. All I can tell you is for sure, don't put all three up at a time unless you plan to just go in a straight line the entire time. Speaking of gear to have with you, as a safety note, make sure you have your life jacket, your leash. A leash is supposed to be attached to your board and this end around your ankle so that in case you fall off, you know physics, you're gonna go one way, the board's gonna go the other. Yeah, that way you won't have to swim as far to get your board back. You can just reel it into ya. And also make sure you have your sunscreen or any sun protection. You know, it could be a hat, sun shirt, anything. The fifth thing I wanted to talk about is to make sure everything you bring with you is really secured to the board. Now, if you would have told me that at the beginning of my paddleboarding experience, I would have been like, yeah, obviously, but there have been times when I just slipped something underneath the bungee cord and I brushed a tree limb as I was paddling past and it knocked it off into the water. There's times I thought I was all steady. This was actually a story in a kayak, but anyway, it still applies. But I was kayaking in Florida. I had a tripod just sitting there because I was like, I'm not moving. Nothing is gonna just reach out and whack it, you know. But a wave came that I wasn't expecting. It fell into the water. And this brings me to the sixth thing I wanted to talk about. What I do is make sure I have a chunk of a pool noodle attached to it. That's kind of a cheap way to make anything float. Anyway, back to the story. The tripod I had, sank kind of quickly, and that's the story of how I lost my first GoPro I ever had. So I guess the point of number 5 and number 6 is, yeah, it seems kind of obvious. Make sure everything's secure, make sure everything floats. But random things can happen that you don't think would, Now, once it comes time to getting on the water, I think it's easy to kind of overthink. Think, I'm leaning a little this way, so I'm going to put more weight on my right foot. Really, just stand up like you would on the ground. Try to overthink as little as possible. Probably getting onto the board might be the hardest part of paddleboarding. But remember, if you don't want to stand up the whole time, sometimes I kneel on the board or kind of sit on my feet. Sometimes I sit crisscross applesauce and row it like a canoe. Holding the paddle is similar to canoeing. If you put your knuckles on top of the grip like this, you have better leverage than if you hold it like this. Although I'll tell you, sometimes when I'm sitting down, I can't change it in my hands quickly enough. So if you ever see me going like this in the video, that's why. But really, you have a lot better leverage if you can stroke like that. A new skill that I'm learning is called the J stroke. If you paddle on one side, it's going to want to go to one way. But if you can learn the J stroke, hopefully that will correct it. You go like a normal stroke, but then if it's a canoe, it would be around your knee. So I feel like when you get a little bit before your feet, you start to pry. I can't do it very well here because there's a stick in my way. But normal stroke and then pry. Here's what that looks like in action and actually on a board instead of a ramp. But you can see straight back and then prying to the side. And hopefully that will course correct to get you going as straight as possible. Like I said, it's not really a skill I've mastered yet. It's just something I know of and I wanted to pass along the knowledge. The 9th mistake I've made is not finding a really good place to paddle. When I first started, I would just look up boat ramps near me, and I ended up going to this one place in Utah, Flaming River Gorge. It was a beautiful place, but there was a really strong wind, really strong current, and it was hard to paddle around. I think a paddleboard is to be a bit more cruisy than a canoe or kayak. It's made for kind of lounging, not necessarily getting to where you need to go. So a lot of times the wind was blowing me back or the current was taking me back. It was hard to get anywhere. What I do now instead to find places to paddle is to go to the app All Trails, and you can filter by activity. And if you do paddle sports, usually that has some ideas for a paddle trail, and hopefully you'll find some reviews. So if it is something like conditions aren't the best, hopefully someone else will let you know and you can avoid being in a not so great paddling spot. The 10th mistake I made while paddleboarding is not knowing how to fold up my board at the end of a paddle. I used to think, okay, just roll it up. But first, if you let it sit in the sun, it'll get kind of soft. What it's made out of loosens up a little bit when it's warm, so it's easier to fold. Then the next thing to do is fold in the sides and then roll it up. My backpack is not as tall as the sides of my board are wide. So the first time I took this out, it was a struggle getting it back in the backpack, but now, not a problem at all. The act of paddleboarding can be peaceful, it can be adventurous, whatever you want it to be. I'm slowly improving my skills, so if I missed a tip that you know, please let me know. If you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. Thank you for watching, and I hope you get to get out there sometime soon.